McKay here, and welcome to another edition of the Art of Manliness podcast. Well, I'm really excited about today's guest today. It's a guy I've been following online for quite some time on his website, Kabuki Warrior. His name is Chris Duffin, and he is a record-setting power lifter. For example, he squatted 881 pounds, set a record, world record, at a 220-pound body weight. He set some other world records as well that we'll talk about. Anyways, on the podcast today, we're going to discuss lifting heavy stuff, why men should be strong, fitness in general, nutrition, but we also talk about some big picture things because Chris has an amazing backstory. If there's such a thing as a self-made man, this guy's it. Started his life out homeless, adopted his younger siblings while he was in college, worked his way through college, master's degree, started his own family, worked his way up the corporate ladder, started his own gym, and at the same time, he was training for elite level powerlifting competitions. So we talk about the mindset that Chris had to develop and how he managed his time and what was driving him to accomplish all that he did. And just listening to his story and hearing him talk is going to kick you in the rear to get you into action. It did for me anyways. Fantastic podcast. I think you're really going to like it. So without further ado, Mr. Chris Duffin. Chris Duffin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on.
All right, so you are a competitive powerlifter. You're a massive man. I mean, it's awesome, super strong. But the other day I was looking through your Instagram feed and I came across a picture you posted when you were 19. And you didn't have the beard. What kind of shirt were you wearing? Some kind of heavy metal.
I think it was Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yep.
Pink Floyd shirt. You got your elbow on this classic car. And now if people will go to your site, you'll see what you look like. Got the beard. You're just huge. Complete transformation. So at what point did you get serious about lifting, and when did you start powerlifting?
Well, that picture was actually taken during just a couple year break. If you go back, there's pictures of me at like 15, and I don't look like what a high schooler looks like. But so I've really been active or lifting almost my entire life, with the exception of that couple year block, and it relates back to. There's a lot of stories about kind of my backstory, my life story. Growing up homeless in the mountains and stuff like that, and so even at a very early age, if we were working mines, I was packing rocks up the side of the hills. I was splitting wood when we were, doing that just as an early child. And then I started lifting in high school and got involved in sports, basically my freshman year. And I've always been, from then on, I've lifted. I pushed myself really hard in wrestling and had a lot of injuries. And when I went to college, I was working full time. Trying to put myself through school, and I took a couple year break on the lifting, and but then I got back into it. I mean, that couple years, like, things just fell apart for me. I started drinking. I started my body. I felt horrible, and so I got back into lifting, and so that was late 90s, and I've continued to lift since then. So, it's been lifting a good 20 years straight, almost at this point. Again, a couple year break in there. And I got into powerlifting in 2000. So a lot of people, they come to me or they see me and they say, man, how long did it take to get that big? Or that strong? And, I know they're always expecting, oh, it's a year or 2 years, you can get there. And it's like, no, it's been 20 years of outworking everybody around me. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make is, not focusing on the long term and thinking about just the steps in front of them or, where they're going to be, and then, pushing it either too hard, running too fast, and then, not thinking, realizing that it's going to be a long haul. At some point you're gonna level out. The gains are gonna quit coming, and you've got to keep at it. So
yeah, I love talking about well, let's get back to that later. But let's talk more about your backstory. I mean, I think I read this on Jack Donovan. Actually, I think did an interview with you. You actually ended up adopting your siblings. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. So, like I said, when I graduated high school, probably half my life had been homeless, and this is a different kind of like poor than you see a lot of kids these days, because they're poor, but they still got nice clothes, they eat well, and they got their their iPhone or whatever it is. I'm like, I don't understand that. We grew up in the mountains, like, killing rabbits, killing, deer, poaching, and spend some time being taken away from the family as well. We all spent some time in foster care, and but it was tough living. It was no electricity. Filling up water in the creek in gallon jugs and setting it out in the sun so that you could dump it over your head once a week to get a bath. Kids making fun of you because your clothes are dirty, you stink. It was a different world, and so it got a little bit more stable as I got into high school. So we got a mobile home. Of course, once we moved out, it was condemned and the fire department burnt down because it was not livable. But it was pretty awesome for us anyway. And but I went off. I got a full ride scholarship, academic scholarship. I was a pretty good athlete as well, but I was also pretty good at academics. So I got a full ride scholarship to go to school, and like I said, I just kind of focused on myself for a couple years, and things kind of fell apart, for me. But then I took a look back home, and things had gotten really bad, and because I was kind of somehow a stable force, in that home environment. And so I had 3 younger sisters who were not doing very well. So I took custody of them and started raising them while I was going to college. So kind of one at a time until I had all 3 of them. While I finished up my bachelor's degree, went on to, get my master's degree. I was raising them while I was doing that, working full time. And, it's one of those things you have to, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come in and say, oh, that's awesome, you did that. Most people wouldn't. I think most people yeah. It's just, it's what you need to do. And so anyway, that's kind of the backstory, I guess, or the short version. There's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
in that.
Well, during that entire time, and even now, I mean, what was driving you, right? I think a lot of people would get into a tough situation like that or something similar, and they would think, well, they're gonna collapse, and I couldn't go on. And was there something that was driving you during that entire, like some long-term goal, or was it just the day-to-day thinking about that? I got to get through this day.
It's a little of both. So I always tell people, to succeed, in the gym, in life, it takes vision, consistency, and hard work. And people think about vision the wrong way. They think about it as, everybody should be a dreamer. And I say bullshit.
Yeah.
There's a million dreamers out there. Everybody has a dream of, being a star, being a, millionaire, or whatever it is. A vision is a picture of every step along the way it takes to get there. A vision is the drudgery, the hard work, and all the things, the years that it's going to take of one foot in front of the next, and knowing what that's going to take to get to where you want to be. And so there's a part of the day-to-day going, okay, I did take a step further. I took that next step. Maybe I didn't actually see the big results today, or even a year from now, or even 3 years from now, but I know I'm working that path, and that path is going to get me to what that vision is that I want to live, that I want to be. And so that's hard, I think, for some people to grasp. There's so much in this society today that is this instant gratification. I can get a credit card, or my parents are going to help me, or all this other stuff. And I've never in my life had any fallback plan whatsoever. Everything falls on me.
Yeah.
There's no I don't have a couch that I can go crash on at home. I have nothing. And so, maybe that's what helped with that, with developing that. But that's what I'm a big believer. You need to know where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you've really got to understand what the steps are to get there and how long it's going to take. And you're going to have to celebrate the little wins that happen along the way, because there's not going to be a big, all of a sudden, now it's happened.
Yeah. My life's changed.
That's not how it works.
Yeah. So let's talk about powerlifting, because it's a world I'm not very familiar with. I'm sure a lot of people aren't familiar with it. What lifts do you typically see in a powerlifting meet? And do athletes who take part in that sport, do they train? Do they have to like do all the lifts, or do they have to do they train for a specific one?
A little of both. So powerlifting is technically 3 lifts. So it is a squat, a bench press, and a deadlift, and they're done in that order. And you've got 3 attempts at a meet. If you make your first attempt, you can raise it and go to the next, and so on. And then once you're done with your 3 squats, you move on to bench press. Same thing repeats. And then you get a powerlifting total, which is your best squat, your best bench, and your best deadlift, all combined. And then there are some people that specialize in either bench press or deadlift, which is part of powerlifting, but I don't know, it's a big argument whether you're a bench presser, whether you're an actual powerlifter.
Yeah.
But powerlifting is the 3 of those. So those are the 3 classical, pure strength movements.
Yeah, it's the ones you always ask your buds: how much you deadlift, how much you bench, how much you squat.
Exactly.
Is there a lift that you particularly specialize in, or that you like to do or compete in?
It depends on what I'm best at the time.
Yeah.
So it kind of changes. I was an awesome bencher for a long time. That was my favorite. And then I got really good at deadlift, so of course that was my favorite. Squatting is my best right now, so that's my favorite.
Yeah.
You often see that it kind of shifts around because it's really hard to bring all 3 of those up at once. Unless you're first starting getting into it. That's something I'll get to people that have been training powerlifting for a couple years, and they're like, "Yeah, only my deadlift's going up right now, and not my such and such." I'm like, "Well, that's kind of the way it works." Once you're past newbie gains, it takes a big toll on the body to actually take all 3 of those upwards all the time.
Yeah.
So,
and you actually, I set a record in a lift, right? It was 1,000 pound. It was a deadlift or squat.
So I've set a number of records through the years. I think the ones I'm most well known for, I did an 881 pound squat weighing 220 pounds, which was it has since been beaten by a friend of mine, but it was a world record at the time. So combination of basically all federations, all rules. Nobody had ever squatted more than that at that body weight before. Deadlift in the gym, I'm also known for doing a 900 pound deadlift for almost a double, again around that same 220 weight class. I was wearing straps, which doesn't qualify for if you're in a meet, but that's a pretty epic lift there. I have the Guinness World Record for the most deadlifted in a minute, with deadlifting 405 for 42 reps in 60 seconds. And then just Wednesday night, I did the most squatted in 1 minute for the Guinness World Record as well. Both those are not weight class dependent. That's just all comers.
Yeah.
And I did 505 pounds for 19 reps in 60 seconds.
That's insane.
So I like kind of doing some of those little oddball stuff sometimes too, because I like demonstrating the development, work capacity development, things of that nature.
That's cool.
Those are the stuff I'm most well known for. So
that's fantastic. Well, congratulations. That's something to be really proud of. For guys who are listening who, because we've published like lifting content on our site, and I've had a few guys ask like, well, I want to get into powerlifting. What's your advice for them if they want to start doing that as their hobby or as their sport and get serious about it?
A great resource is to go check out elitefts.com. So there's a number of great articles, coaches, just tons of content from all over, and they are powerlifting. And so that's a great resource there. There's a lot of people that kind of sell out and branch out into other areas as soon as they get the opportunity to, and they've retained true to that crowd. So that's where the content is directed. My YouTube channel and my website has a ton of great content on it for helping people move better. It's a lot of stuff. It's really a lot of like clinical based items, really from some developmental kinesiology and stuff like that. But I take that material and break it down into, here's the steps, step by step. Here's the 5 things that you need to do, and this is how you cue the cues that you use while you're squatting. Here's the stuff you need to do to get yourself warmed up and prepped. But it's all about proper movement, which I believe is the foundation to anything. It doesn't matter, some set and rep scheme or program that you're following. First thing first is you've got to move properly. And there's really some fundamentals to that, it's actually, I just love the fact that I can put this content out there and it reaches people around the world. And, I get feedback on a daily basis, and I just, about, removing people from pain, allowing them to set PRs. And this is from beginners, intermediates to the best of the best in powerlifting. So anyway, getting a little sidetracked there, but,
yeah.
It's a great resource. So kabukiwarrior.com or my YouTube channel, Kabuki07. And again, elitefts.com is a tremendous resource for training knowledge.
It's okay. Yeah, I agree. One of the things I love about your content in the videos is that you get really technical with the movements, right? And it's not just it's not like mental masturbation. Let's talk science, but like there's a point to it. And I love how you simplify it and give just easy cues to follow. The squat video was very helpful for me. So definitely recommend you guys go check that out. So you mentioned Kabuki Warrior. All right, that's the name of your website.
Yes. Okay.
What is a Kabuki Warrior? Because I think it's a cool name. I hear that, I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's like, that sounds badass. But what's significance? What's the meaning behind that?
It could be in any number of things. There's a lot of I got to republish some old articles I've done. I've done a lot of articles where I relate, how you can apply the things that you learn, practice, discipline, those things in the gym to your career, to your life. And one of those is the concept of the Kabuki Warrior. And it could be, that's taken from Japanese culture, but it could be any culture basically, where you've got this differentiation of, you've got the man that's the father, the farmer, the part of the community. But when it comes time for war, that person has to transform into something else. And so you've got this ritualistic thing that happens, and it's been I think in almost every culture where there's either a mask or a painting of the face, and it's this, how do you transform from that being a member of a community to this, savage beast that's going to go out there and do some pretty evil, bad things to protect your tribe, your community. And, you've got to put yourself in an entirely different frame of mind. You've got to become another person. And so that's, I picked, a Kabuki mask. And I didn't really pick it. There's a long story from college. That's how I got that name. But the concept is still there.
Yeah.
And that's how you apply it. I mean, so many people, you see them, they take their lifting in the gym a little bit too serious. Yeah. They go around and that's who they are. And, they're a badass and, all this and, and that's the thing that defines them. And without it, they're nothing else. And I think that's kind of sad too. Where, if you're going to perform in the gym, you do need to have that attitude, that warrior mentality, that I'm going to drive, I'm going to push. Again, if you refer to my content, not push through pain or do things like that's stupid, they're going to hurt you. But you've got to have that mentality. But you got to leave it at the door. You need to turn it on when you go in there and turn it off when you're done. And so that's my concept kind of around that.
I love that. That's really cool. So kind of on that same topic about guys training, getting strong so they can be protectors of the tribe. I mean, whenever we publish fitness content or tactical content on the site, most people love it, but every once in a while you get that guy who's like, well, this is stupid. Being big and strong is just pointless. Like knowing how to defend yourself as dumb. We live in this modern, safe world where, we don't need that anymore. What's your response to guys like that who say you don't need this whole weight training thing is just a waste of time? You don't need to be big and strong. Why should a man be strong even in our modern age?
So if we take that concept a bit further, there's a lot of things we don't need to be that are manly anymore in our modern age.
Yeah.
We may as well just be emasculated men, or not even men anymore, right? I mean, what's really needed? So, but there is a part of, it doesn't change who we are, how we interact with other men, how we interact with women, how we interact with society as general, is all based on, females interact a certain way because they're women. We interact a different way because we're men. And there's a lot of pieces to that. And if we take that away, we're actually doing a disservice to both our community, the women that would be our partners, our children, all those things. If we're not being a man, we're doing a disservice. And part of being a man is we are physical. And, you need to explore that physicality. It doesn't mean you have to get enormous like me, but you should consider yourself an athlete in some sense or another. I don't care whether it's, running, doing kettlebells, doing martial arts, or whatever it is, but you need to be exploring that piece of yourself to be a man and really understand what it is to be a man. So, if you give that up, where are you going to draw the line? You could watch the commercials and be the guy that's on the Tide commercial.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I've seen that guy.
That's not a guy. It's my point.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's an important piece.
Yeah.
And we men, and this is on my website, men should be a pillar of strength, physically, mentally, and emotionally. That is our duty.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard, and sometimes it's it leaves you kind of alone, but that's who we are, and that's part of it. So we're not the what everybody wants to sit wants us to kind of become now, is going, oh well, you should be this tender thing and cry every time, and it just is that who you are? Is that who I am? No. So anyway, that's my viewpoint on it, and training is part of that.
Yeah. And so, do you think weight training helps those other aspects, that like being physically strong transfers over to strength in your family, strength as a husband, strength in as that pillar in the community you were saying?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was saying. And, you just take it. If you don't, it does change who you are. So if you don't train and you eat like crap and you do all these things, you're going to have, low testosterone. It's going to change your mind. It changes who you are. It changes how you interact. And you're not going to be, like I said, you're going to be doing a disservice to those that you need to be a man for.
That's awesome. So I follow a lot of powerlifters on Instagram. I don't know how I ended up following them. I have no idea. And then like on, blogs and whatnot. And what I appreciate about you is that, like, I think you're the only one I know that's like actually married, has young kids. You have a business outside of this. You train and you compete at the same time. So my question is, how do you balance all of that? Like, how do you balance your training? Because I know some guys who they want to get into weight training, and they have a hard time. It's like, man, I got my job, I got my family. So how do you do it?
People come to me and they go, that'd be great if I could do this or I could do that, but I've got this in my way or that in my way, and I try to lead by example. And there really isn't anybody that can come up with an excuse not to come to the gym if I can make it to the gym or do those things. It comes down to prioritization. Is it important to you? And I challenge you, if you're not finding the time, to really monitor what you do on a daily and weekly basis. And you'll find that oh, well, you've got time to watch that sitcom or drink a beer and watch the game on Sunday, or, but it also relates to things that I'm not good at too, because in that prioritization, I really let a lot of things that, I guess it's like laundry or things like that, that continue to repeat over and over in our tasks, I just don't do.
Yeah.
Which sometimes, that can be difficult. It can be difficult, on the home life and things like that as well. But you think about it. So just a little bit about the things that I do. So for the last 18 years, I've been managing manufacturing businesses. The last 10 years, I've been doing like company or division turnaround work. The last 8 years, I've been at the corporate executive level, where, whether the company is going to make it or you're going to, or whether, everybody there is going to have a job, falls on your shoulders. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going down, from negotiations and dealing with banks and, difficult stuff. And then I own my gym. I've got my family.
You got a gym on the side.
And then I've got my hobbies and all that other stuff too, right? And I'm training to be the best in the world. That mixture of stuff, you really have to know what's important and just drop the things that aren't. So many people, like in my work, I come in and I have a tremendous impact on companies and the teams that I work with. But I'm usually replacing somebody that's done tasks. And, I strip it down, and, the things that are important are, how I impact leadership and how I delegate and how I, how I motivate people. And, it's not the fact that I've done this report or done that report or been kept up on timekeeping or, all these other, daily stuff that people like to feel that they're doing work, like to feel that they're busy. And so they do stuff.
Yeah.
But is that stuff, if we get back to that vision, is that the stuff that's moving you forward?
Is it effective?
Right. Is it that's going to help you reach that vision, or is it just something that's on your list for today that I got to run to Walgreens or I got to do this? I mean, that stuff is there, but you've got to figure out how to drop that stuff, how to eliminate it, how to automate it, and cut out the crap.
Cut out the crap. Do you have a TV?
I didn't until I met my wife.
That's how it always goes.
I didn't have a TV.
Yeah.
It stuff like that eats up too much time.
Yeah.
And so I do watch TV. I watch a couple shows that my wife watches because that's some time that we spend together.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't touch it.
Yeah. Do you do like some purposeful planning? Like, do you like plan your week out or your day out, or is it just sort of you have big picture goals, and if some task doesn't line up with that goal, you're just like, I'm not going to do it?
Yeah, I'm really good at like capturing a lot of different detail and complexity mentally. I don't know. It's just it's a weird gift that I've got. So
good for you. So
it allows me to do a lot of that without necessarily planning, but I do at times have to break down and do that. So it's variable.
That's okay. Well, it's inspiring what you've done. So I mean, whenever I read about your life, I'm like, man, I need to get my act together. I need to. It's a kick in the pants.
If it makes it any easier, though, I have, so as of 2 weeks ago, walked away from my corporate career.
Okay, so what are you doing now? You doing the training or coaching?
So yeah, I'm basically, well, I've got the gym as one business, and then the other business, which I launched at the beginning of this year, is developing innovative products and coaching services, to help people be better. And so, I've got the shoulder rock, I've got the Duffin movement series that I'm working on publishing right now. So anyway, and then the coaching, the online coaching piece. So that's the stuff that I'm doing. And basically, I've been, we're talking about prioritizing and doing all this stuff, but at the same time, you've got to really look at that list of stuff that I talked about, and really, that's not even grasping all of it. Mm-hmm. I run, I sprint all day long until it's ready to crash, until I fall over, and that's how I operate, and that's how I've gotten through my life and gotten where I'm at. So there is prioritization too, but there's also been, I'm burning out. I'm just flat burning out, and I've never really been able to, also on the competitive side, I probably only got a few years left to really try to achieve what I feel I'm capable of on the athletic side. And, I'm at just kind of at a weird point in my life where, climbing that corporate ladder, trying to make more money, trying to do all this stuff just isn't a priority for me anymore.
Yeah.
And, so, the last couple of years have been pretty tough on me, with, trying to keep everything going. And also I'm just getting older, and trying to sprint the way I have, I'm not able to really do anymore. And, so anyway, it's pretty exciting changes for me, right now, is the fact that, I've officially taken a step away from that. I'm sitting in my home office right now. I'm either here or at my gym office, these days. And, that's the path forward for me, and I'm really excited about it.
That's cool. Congratulations. And then, new season in your life. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's allowing me to really focus on what I'm passionate about. I mean, if you watch any of my videos, I'm sure you can see where my passion falls. And, I just don't see the need to chase a career that I don't care that much about anymore. So
that's awesome. Good for you, man. So we've talked some big picture stuff. I'm going to get some specifics. I got a world-class lifter here, so I'd be amiss of not asking you some training questions. But what are the biggest roadblocks you've encountered with your training and coaching, that guys encounter that stall their progress in the gym?
So there's a couple things. One is that consistency. I see people get fired up, and they'll come in for 3 months, maybe 6 months, and just kill it. And then they just kind of taper off. And I'm like, you've got to keep going. Or, if you can't hold that pace, find a pace that you can hold. Or you get the other side of the coin where, you've got people that you've been training with for years, and they come in and they do the heavy lifts, and they're gone, and they're not putting in the work. And they're always going, how do you get as strong or be where you're at? And I'm like, well, I'm here for an extra hour and a half after you are every damn day, year over year. It kind of has an impact. So those are the two things. There's really, understanding the long-term game. This isn't NASCAR. It doesn't happen at 200 miles an hour. You've got to put in work, and, the fact that you busted your ass for 3 months and then took a month off and now you're back at it again really has an impact. You've got to consistently stay with it, and you've got to put in the work. So, that's the two things that I see. I mean, it is cumulative. It takes time. It takes dedication. Anybody that you see that has, any level of world class or size or anything of that nature, they put in the time. You're usually talking to somebody that's been at it for 10 or 15 years. So, what do you say to those guys? And one thing I've seen happen a lot with guys who never lifted, they start lifting and they get those newbie gains, right? I mean, they just get really, every week they're setting PRs, they're getting bigger, and then all of a sudden just comes to a standstill, and they just get frustrated and they stop. Is there like any, I don't know, mindset shift or like anything you can tell those guys who have reached that plateau that just keep chugging along? Yeah, I mean, you actually even see this on the very elite level. So I see this all the time. Like, I'll see somebody that's been training for a couple years, and they're doing phenomenal. Everybody's like, man, they are going to be the next greatest thing of powerlifting. And I always just, okay, we'll wait and see, because 2 years does not tell you that. Because, what's going to happen is they are going to slow down, or the gains are going to quit coming, or they're going to injure themselves. And, the long-term thing is you have to figure out how to work around that stuff. You have to figure out how to make this part of your life, a lifestyle. You've got to figure out, again, how to work through, those issues that come up, how to stay focused and dedicated when, maybe there's going to be a year where you're going to work and maybe your bench press moves up 5 pounds. I've gone for years with 0 moves on my bench press. And, you've got to learn to love what you're doing. Yeah. And So, if you're going to reach that phase, no matter who you are, and you've got to understand that, that's a part of it, and focus on the pieces that are moving, and try to work on, always have some sort of goal that you can be working on. So it doesn't have to be if my bench press doesn't move up 10 pounds in the next 3 months, I'm a failure. But, am I making progress in some other area? Am I getting more functional? Am I moving this area up? And am I getting my work capacity up? There's so many things you've got to look at in different ways. And, also being willing to stay disciplined without having that positive reinforcement of making gains like you did when you started. So, that's the thing. You've got to figure out how to do that.
Okay. What's your thoughts on accessory work? You mentioned the shoulder rock, right? Can you explain what that is? And it's sort of like a mace, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah. So it's a classical play on an instrument that's been around a long time, the gata or the mace, which was used in classical fighting cultures for shoulder development. Mine is I guess you would call it a modern version of that. It's a little bit longer. It's loadable with standard Olympic plates. That does a few different things without trying to spend too much time on it. And then I've got a coaching video that goes with it that is very clean, very refined on how to get someone up to speed on doing a proper swing, and then also integrating that swing pattern with some of the developmental kinesiology pieces to really get the shoulder plugged into the core properly, which that's where the breakdown comes that causes a lot of shoulder issues from both the trained people and the non-trained people. I could go into a dissertation on that for quite a while, but I'll try not to. It's basically you're swinging it around over your head, down around behind you, and basically actively opening up the shoulders. So it's with an eccentric load instead of like mobility, like stretching work. You're actually actively open them up, and then you're actually engaging all the supporting structures from lats, the subscap, everything. And then the way I teach it, you've actually got that integrated into the core, which does a developmental reset. So it's a great tool because you're getting a workout in. You're actually getting up to speed, and you're getting improved flexibility. You're getting improved, like I said, mobility, stability, and strength all in one. So it's something I'm really passionate about. I've trained some of the best bench pressers in the world on it. They've absolutely loved it. Helped a number of people with rehab, post-surgery rehab. Actually, in particular, Eric Spoto, the best bench presser in the world. I did his shoulder rehab training plan, and we integrated the shoulder rock, and he's had absolutely phenomenal success. I've again getting tremendous feedback from around the world. I've been shipping it around the world from people, and it's people just love it too. That's the awesome piece. Is it's not this extra piece that you've got to do. Like I get so frustrated that's where a lot of newbies I think go wrong. Maybe I should have gone into this conversation. Is I see so many people now that there's so much content on mobility work, and they'll spend like 45 minutes like stretching and rolling and doing all this stuff on the floor, and then go over and train for 15 minutes and go home. And you know what? They don't make any progress. Yeah. But mobility is so important. Well, yes, but you've got to understand actually what mobility is. So mobility issues are typically caused by a shutdown. I mean, the body that's its response to try to protect yourself. If you get knocked out, you've got mobility in all directions. And so I do what's called magic tricks all the time with people that, they can't touch their toes and they've got pain at 8 inches away. And I'll do some stability drills, and all of a sudden they can touch their toes with no pain. It's awesome. But it's just some of that integration stuff. And at the same time, I mean, if you're going to go into the gym and lift weights, do you think laying down on the floor and relaxing and, is really going to be the right thing to get you primed to lift? You don't want to lay down on the floor, relax, like massage style relax. That's stuff that, if you've got issues, do some other time. Do after you train. Do on your off days. It doesn't mentally get you prepared, and honestly, it's not the best preparation for training. And I see so many people just kind of lose focus on that. I know I'm way off topic.
No, this is great
topic here, but I see it a lot with a lot of newbie stuff because of that. There is so much content out there on the mobility side, and people think it's this super important piece. And yes, it is important, but you've got to understand, the issues are because you're lacking stability. One, so let's work on that. And let's get the muscles firing properly. So all this should be actually happened in movement. You need to move before you train, not lay and relax. So, and that's kind of the fundamental of the shoulder rock as well. I have people that get the gains and do it better, more efficiently. They spend a couple minutes doing that, and bam, they're ready to go with training. So that's kind of the fundamental thought process behind my whole approach, which is clinically based.
Yeah.
So,
so do you with like that accessory work, like the shoulder rock, do you do it the day you lift, or is it like you do it on an off day? Like, when should people incorporate things like that?
So if you've got so what I do is prior to training, and this is my whole fundamental approach. You're going to do movement-based stuff to get things firing properly. If you're going to come in and squat and deadlift, a big problem people have is, and this leads into mobility issues as well, but they've been sitting at their desk, or they're sitting in their car in traffic, or doing all these things. So glutes usually aren't firing. If the glutes aren't firing, you get shortening of the psoas. You've got tightness in those areas that automatically pulls the hip forward. And if the hip isn't centrated properly, it's not integrated into the core properly. Going off base again, but I'll pull it back in. So anyway, as that happens, you don't have proper centration in the joint. You don't have stability in the core. Well, the hips are going to tighten up, or you're going to have anterior pelvic tilt as you lift, which is going to cause disc issues because you're not able to lift effectively. So back to clean this up nice and simple and concise is I'm going to do some movements that get my glutes firing properly. So I'm going to real quick, do some goblet squats, a few sets of 10, see how things feel. Going to do some rear leg elevated squats, rear leg elevated or Bulgarian squats with kettlebells or with my body weight or dumbbells. Boom, 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 hit those. And do a couple other specialty things that I have to help with that. And then I'm going to move into training. And I'm going to be warmed up already. It's going to shorten my warm-up cycle. My mobility is actually going to be improved, and my performance lifting and my ability to lift safely is going to be better. Now, if I continue and I've got major mobility issues because of this stuff, that still may need to be worked short term. The long-term problem is to work on that stability pieces, but you may need to do that. So if you need to do that, you could do your stretching and your mobility work, like let's say with the hips in this example, after you work out or on your off day. So that's kind of the approach there. Before I bench and before I squat, I'm going to do some shoulder rocks, open up the shoulders, get things integrated in better, and then move into my training. I'm going to do my core lifts, and then I'm going to do 3 supporting movements that work that. So after I bench, I'm going to do some triceps, I'm going to do some shoulders. And I'm going to work on trying to develop some hypertrophy. So, I'm going to be doing, 3 or 4 sets of 10 to 12, or maybe even higher if it's glute work. I may be working up towards 100 reps over 4 sets. So that's the basis of the approach is move, get things firing properly, get proper joint centration before you train, which is going to shorten your training, your warm-up cycle, get you better prepared. If you've got mobility work that you need to do and it isn't getting resolved with those alone, do it on your off days. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So I think one thing a lot of guys have trouble with, because you mentioned there's all this content out there now about training, but there's even a crap more about nutrition. And I think that's where a lot of guys just get, I'm like, should I do low carb, carbs, protein? So do you guys overly complicate the nutrition aspect of training? Do you think?
I think so. The thing is, there is a lot of different ways. because there's so many diets have a different level of impact on lifestyle. They require a different level of discipline, and they have different outputs as well. And then people respond differently as well. So there's a lot of stuff, and people don't take that into consideration. That they'll bash on one diet or bash on another because it's not as effective. Well, guess what? That may be the diet for you because of what you have going on in life and your level of discipline and your goals. So it really does become relative. But people do get way too complicated on it. I mean, it comes down to, it is calories in and calories out. If you're training, you want to have a decent amount of protein. You're going to need carbs to support training unless you're, really desperate or you're really functional. Not a lot of people are going to be able to do full keto. So, you're going to have basically 1.3 to 1.4 grams of protein per pound of body mass. Carbs are going to be around the same, 1.3 to 1.4. If you're trying to gain weight and add some extra mass, maybe you're going up to 1.7, 1.8 as far as carbs. Great way. Now, if you're getting some good carbs and good protein for energy and recovery, you're probably going to want to keep the fats a little bit low just so that your calories don't go through the roof. So, if you keep your fats between, 150 or 100 grams, you're going to make good gains, you're going to train well, and you're going to progress well. But, like I said, there's a lot of different approaches, a lot of different ways to do that. And I know people that have had great success on keto diets. I know how, like I said, there's a lot of different ways, but honestly, I just gave you a pretty basic approach to that. If you want to gain weight, target putting 500 calories per day on top of your normal diet. Maybe start with 250, bump it to 500. If you want to start losing weight, take out 250 to 500 calories a day, and you'll slowly drop weight. If you want to know how many calories your base metabolic rate is, track everything that you eat without making any changes for 2 weeks. We're talking weigh it and put it into FitDay or wherever you need to calculate your macros. And if you're gaining weight or losing weight, basically it's 3,500 pounds or 3,500 calories per pound of fat. So if you're gaining, a pound a month a week or a pound of fat a month, you're that, and you've calculated, your daily calories are 3,000 calories a day. Well, there's an extra 3,500 per month. So roughly just under 1,000 calories in excess on top of that. So it means you're around 2,200, calories. Does that math make pretty good sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Now you want to gain or lose, where you're at. Maybe every year or two, your metabolism does change, and it does change based on the amount of work. So maybe 6 months or a year, if you've made big changes to your training program, do the same process again. Maybe your base is now 3,000. Okay. Do you want to gain? Do you want to lose? Do you want to maintain? Okay. It's all right there.
All right there. So it just depends on your goals, right?
It does.
Yeah. I think one thing I see with a lot of guys who start lifting is that they don't have any gains, right? They just feel weak all the time. Like, what are you eating? And like, well, I'm doing like the paleo diet. I'm like, dude, you need more carbs. Like,
you do. And that's why I said, it's like I said, some people really succeed with that. But honestly, from a performance standpoint, paleo or keto are not performance diets.
Yeah. You've
got to have carbs in there. That's why I said. So, and if you're adding carbs in there, the success of paleo and ketos have high levels of fat. So, you're going to, so your calories don't go to the roof. You're going to have to drop some of those out. So it really isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
So if you're being responsible with, get enough protein, be responsible with your carb and fat intake. But I do see a lot of people that just simply don't eat enough. Especially people that are, the ones that can't gain weight, they always say, oh, I eat a ton. And trust me,
they're not eating a ton.
Go input everything that you eat, and you will find out that they simply don't. I mean, I got on Reddit the other day, and And somebody had posted like Jim Windler. So Jim Windler's a powerlifter. Did some stuff with Elite FTS. He's got a pretty good entry-level training program for people, ebook style stuff. And somebody had posted his diet up, and they're like, "Oh my God, how can he possibly eat that much a day? Is that a joke?" And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is your people's problem. I mean, seriously, that's a diet for me. Like, that is a diet. I would be losing weight like crazy if I ate that little. And these people are like freaking out going, how does he eat that much? Well, you just got to start building it up. Yeah. It's like anything else. So
there was a funny video where I guess, did you see how The Rock posted his diet? It was like 10 pounds of food a day, and it was like cod, like with every meal. And this guy tried to follow the Rock diet, and like he ended up throwing up at 3 o'clock. just too much food. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, and you got to, and I mean, you just got to, you're not going to turn that on. I mean,
yeah,
you just got to acclimate.
Yeah, if you're not the Rock yet, don't eat the Rock diet.
If you're 150 pounds, don't eat the diet that a 270 pound eater is gonna. But you're gonna. Guess what? You're going to need to eat more if you want to get up to 220 pounds.
Exactly. It costs a lot of energy to weigh that much.
It does.
It does. All right, so let's get talking about, you're doing some great, you're talking about you quit the corporate gig, you're doing the full-time coaching and stuff, and you're doing some really interesting things with technology with the online coaching. Can you talk a little bit about your new program that you've come out with?
Yeah. So, obviously I'm pretty effective with, my training programs on myself. I'm a pretty strong guy in general, but I'm not terribly gifted on that end, and it's just been a lot of years of hard work and figuring things out. Had a ton of success with taking a lot of other people just to the same levels. I've got tons of number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 ranked men and women in the world that I've trained. And these are not people like a Westside Barbell that they're recruiting people. I'm taking people from my local Portland, Oregon, training area, and making them the best. And so I've been playing around with basically velocity-based training methodology for the last few years. I've got a couple items that they're made in Australia, but they're basically measuring bar speed and power output, but they're pretty expensive. But I've really refined my approach with that. And so from an online aspect, I'm starting to get involved with that because now I've got the capability. So I talked about I'm filming the Duffin Movement series. So I'm really developing this really in-depth library of both clinical and training knowledge. It's like there's like 10 hours worth of content that's going into this library. But between that and the velocity-based training, so there's some new pieces that have come out that are much more economical. They sell for $189, not $2,200, which makes it a viable option for a daily person. And the value in the velocity-based training is really not training around velocity parameters per se, but using it as an auto-regulation tool. And what auto-regulation is basically managing both CNS fatigue and fatigue accumulation and making changes to the training program prior to the fact of you going over the cliff or whatever, and basically managing the training based on how your body's responding. And if we get into like the science of training, I mean, the most researched methods in the world come out of the Russian, the Eastern European bloc. I mean, they covered people over cycle. In cycle, I mean Olympic cycle. So, that's a 4-year cycle, and they did multiple of these. So, it's research over like 20, 30-year periods on athletes. And in the end, variability, so varying both intensity and volume parameters has a huge impact. And it's not progressive loading, but variability over basically 4-week periods of time. And so from a planning aspect, you can really dial down very intricate and effective plans based off of these methods. But, and this is where like the auto-regulation comes in that I'm doing, is we talked about my life, and I know you've got stuff going on in your life, but these athletes that they did the research on, they were athletes, and they were athletes in the Eastern Bloc that wanted to show the world that they were the best. And they worked in a compound, and they didn't have family around, and they didn't have jobs. Their job was to wake up, to eat, to train, to eat, get a massage, and train again. And the only variable was training. So for all the rest of us, guess what? A bad day at work, an argument with the wife, bad traffic, and all these other things feed on top of your training plan. And I don't know how to manage that without really getting feedback. And so anyway, my online training system, so a client, I send them basically this gyroscope that goes on their arm, and that feeds to a portal. I write a program based on, I look at filming, so my assessment period takes several weeks. I'm reviewing their lifts, how they're moving, and I am basically developing a training plan based around what their goals are, where they are in the life cycle of an athlete, how they're moving, which it deals with exercise selection, what I have them doing from a prehab, rehab standpoint, and basically a lot of feedback from that Duffin movement series and all that library. And then I write this training program. In my training program, I load into this this portal, which feeds right to their iPhone or Android phone, or basically their mobile device. So it'll pull up for their day of training. They've got right there on their mobile device, which is linked to the band on their wrist or on their arm. And it'll have the training plan, but it'll also be based on variables. So that's how I'll auto-regulate, and is basically around the parameters. So they'll be lifting, and so as they're lifting, it'll say, oh, you're going to do this exercise, and the video will be right there, and I'll be walking through my coaching points on their mobile device like I'm there, like I was there in person. And then they'll be able to lift up to a certain weight based on the parameters. And if their CNS is fatigued, instead of doing a 350-pound squat, maybe they work up to 325 because of a fight or stress at work or any of those things. Or maybe they'll work up to 350 pounds, but because of a late night bachelor party with a buddy, their fatigue accumulation is beyond what I expected as far as the training program I wrote, because I can't anticipate that. So instead of doing the 5 sets I had planned, they can only do 3. And again, that's because of the parameters that I'm telling them to train around. And they're getting the feedback right there on their mobile device saying, here's the speed that you're lifting at, so this is what you're able to lift to, and so on. So, and then all that's feeding right back into the portal. So I'm able on a weekly basis, so I'll review videos of their lift and see how they're improving and how they're moving based on the feedback I'm giving them. So I may assign some new corrective movement patterns. I may change the exercise in their training program. I may change what they're doing from an activation pattern prior to lifting. But I'm also seeing exactly how they're performing and getting all the data of every set and every rep that they're lifting, and then revising their training plan from there. So it's some pretty cool stuff. I mean, so I call it virtual coaching, because really it is, there's a ton of people that do online coaching, and they write, they give this template or that template, and you may as well just buy their ebook, because that's really all it is. But here I'm creating an individualized plan based on how someone's moving, and using some very in-depth methodology from a movement perspective on how I do that. Doing auto-regulation, and from the client perspective, I mean, they've got the private content on coaching and moving right there on their mobile device. They're getting feedback on their lift, and which is telling them what to do if I was there, as far as calls for weights and number of sets. And then, I'm getting that data and using that for refining their plans for the future and how they're responding to that plan. So anyway, it's pretty cool stuff.
That is some cool stuff. Where can people find out about that?
It's on my website, kabukiwarrior.com. So there's some details on training plan. It's pretty awesome. It's really for if you've trained for 18 months or better, so it's not off the shelf. So if you're coming in, and haven't trained before, probably don't need to use it. But really a lot of intermediate to advanced lifters. I do train elite lifters, the best of the best as well, but that's really where this is kind of targeted is your intermediate to advanced lifters. And yeah, it's great. So
That's awesome. Well, Chris Duffin, this has been a fascinating discussion. A lot of great takeaways from here. Thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Our guest today was Chris Duffin. He is a world record-setting powerlifter as well as weightlifting coach. You can find out more about his work at kabukiwarrior.com. Also at Elite Fits. That's ELITEFTS.com. He writes content there. Also make sure to check out his YouTube channel. If you are interested in powerlifting, weightlifting, he's got a lot of great free content there to help you improve your lifting. Well, that wraps up another edition of the Art of Manliness podcast. For more manly tips and advice, make sure to check out the Art of Manliness website at artofmanliness.com. And if you enjoy this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review on iTunes, on Stitcher, whatever it is you use to listen to the podcast. Also, the best compliment you could give us is recommending the podcast to your friends. I'd really appreciate that. Until next time, this is Brett McKay telling you to stay manly.